Okay, at the same time, of course, we've been tracking very closely here the ongoing United Auto Workers strike of the big three, as we've been discussing. This, happened last week. They actually went out on strike after they were unable to reach a deal with the big three. They are targeting all three automakers with what they're calling a stand-up strike. That means they're not all going out at once. They announced 3 plants that are on strike right now. I think that's about 13,000 of the roughly 150,000 UAW auto workers who are working at these big three. So that's the direction that they're going in. We've had, yesterday we covered the political response. We had Biden very clearly on the side of the workers, using their framing, saying record profits should mean record contracts. You had Trump unable to say whose side he was on when he was asked directly by Kristen Welker, are you on the side of the bosses or are you on the side of the auto workers? However, he wants to use this moment to try to re-signify his working class solidarity, even though, in my opinion, this has been nothing but empty words. And he also wants to use it as a cudgel against some of the push towards electric vehicles. So let's put this up on the screen from the New York Times. This broke just yesterday. There is a second Republican debate scheduled for next week. So this is coming very soon. And instead of going to that debate, Trump is instead going to travel to Detroit and give a speech to a lot of workers and potentially union workers, again, in an attempt to sort of tacitly signal his support for auto workers, even as he hasn't explicitly backed their wage and other demands. According to the New York Times, it also says the campaign is considering the possibility of having Mr. Trump make an appearance at the picket line, although the advisor said such a visit is unlikely. So this is the play that he is making, and part of it, Saagar, is trying to signal his support for workers without actually taking an explicit stance in favor of their demands. Part of it is trying to hit Biden over EVs and the electric vehicle transition. And part of it is also to signal to Republicans that, listen, this whole primary situation that you all are playing at, this is over. I'm focused on the next one.
That's actually the one that I take it most. He's like, I'm playing for the general. I'm playing for Michigan. I'm playing to win. And it's actually a smart play on literally all sides, as you said. I mean, Trump won a decent portion of the union vote in 2016 and in 2020. Not an outright majority, but enough in order to make some Democrats scared. Obviously, a lot of auto workers in particular backed him in 2016 because of some of the claims he made. Some of them didn't end up being true whenever it came to GM plants and all of that. I wonder,
Ask people in Lordstown how that went.
I wonder, Krystal, though, if he will reverse and actually would come out on the side. Because outright joining a picket line, I mean, you tell me. I mean, that seems like an outright declaration of support. Like if you were going to, and he hasn't done that. We'll see, what the actual thing comes down to. I would just take note that, politically savvy is Trump. Like right yesterday, Tim Scott was on Capitol Hill. He was asked about the auto strike. He says, quote, I think Ronald Reagan gave us a great example when federal employees decided they were going to strike. He said, you strike, you're fired. Pretty simple concept to me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is what the other side of the GOP looks like. And it is just funny because
and Pence has said similar things.
Pence has said the same thing. So did Nikki Haley as well.
Really?
I don't actually really understand. Is South Carolina like that? Not, I feel like there's a lot of working class.
They're very right to work there. They're very
at the high levels of government,
there.
sure.
And they have a number of, they've got a big non-union BMW plant there, et cetera. So that's like kind of baked in.
Makes sense. But the point, my thing is I'm looking at that and then you see Trump and you're like, oh, well, that's why he even was able to win, off rhetoric alone in 2016. So I think it's a very politically savvy move, as you said. And the other thing that I think is smart is this time it's a primetime speech. It's an actual speech where the networks are going to have to choose which one they're going to have to cover, as opposed to the Tucker interview that dropped on Twitter, where the clips, let's be honest, they just weren't widely circulated.
Yeah.
They did what they wanted did not occur, which is that for it to upstage in terms of viewership. Now, you can say all you want about the numbers and all that, maybe, some of it in terms of regular viewers. But I think what Trump cares about and has always cared about the most is the ability to dominate the actual conversation.
And he did not do that.
He did not do that.
There's no doubt about it.
There's no question. I mean, we saw a tremendous interest from a general purpose audience on our show for the GOP primary. And I've spoken to people in media it surpassed all expectations across several outlets. So there was no, there's no ambiguity here as that people were interested. And if he wants to continue to not show up to the debates, then he wants to have to try and dominate some of these airwaves. And I think this actually is a smarter play by actually forcing them to choose what they're going to cover and not, and then possibly even getting them to ask questions about it, whatever he's saying in said speech. Like tonight, President Trump is at the UAW or is talking to UAW workers. Where do you stay? So in a reactive sense to get the moderators to ask about it.
I mean, I would certainly think and hope that the auto worker strike is a topic of conversation in the debate. I think it would be, with Trump or no Trump, I think it'd be real shame for that to not be brought up and see what these candidates have to say. Even as, I mean, yeah, the writing is kind of on the wall at this point. Right. Trump has really pulled away. The first debate didn't do much in terms of moving the needle. If anything, in some ways, it strengthened his position because you had Nikki Haley coming up a little bit, taking a little bit down on Ron DeSantis, kind of eating into his position. No one else broke out of the pack to really consolidate like one potential Trump alternative candidate. That just benefits him. I'm a little skeptical that he'll really be able to successfully counter-program any of these debates just because they are such a big, seminal event and they contain so much, theater and spectacle that people really enjoy that combat and to, see these candidates head to head, et cetera. So I'm not sure how much he'll be able to break through in terms of forcing this choice. And it's not like the media is like super excited about covering strikes and economic issues anyway. One piece on his rhetoric, I mean, we debated the EV piece yesterday, so you guys can go back and watch that. But one thing about his rhetoric that really bugs the hell out of me and that I also think is totally off base with the actual workers who are involved in this strike is he keeps attacking Shawn Fain.
Yes.
Without seemingly realizing that this guy is brand new, that he was just elected by these members, that they are very wholeheartedly behind him. I mean, we, have Jordan Sheridan on the ground there from Status Quo talking to the workers. They are very much with him and with his approach and all on board with this strike. So all of his crap that's really typical, like Republican union busting kind of language about like the union bosses and you should quit the union and form a new union and all of this kind of nonsense, I think is very off base and displays a lack of understanding about what has actually been going on for these workers inside of the auto workers.
I don't think anyone has ever accused Trump of being the details guy.
Yeah, certainly.
So I think he's probably, I mean, as you said, I think he's probably stuck in the previous frame of mind, which was correct, is that, these union, the previous leader, didn't he get fined? I think he might have gone to jail or he was charged or something like that.
There was previous leadership, not the president, but there were leaders of the union who, yes, had charges against them. And the message that Fain ran on was not only being more militant with regard to these big three, but the idea that the previous leadership was too cozy with the bosses. And that won out. And it was extraordinary. They also just changed the way that those elections even happened so that it was a much more democratic vote and actually represented the desires of the rank and file. So this part he either doesn't understand or doesn't want to understand or whatever. But, I continue to think because his message on this is kind of convoluted. It's all like he'll dodge when asked, like, whose side are you actually on? But then has, this lengthy thing about EVs and China and Biden and inflation and the union leadership, et cetera. I do think Biden's message on this is much more clear-cut.
About wages.
Yes, I stand with the workers. Right. They deserve a better wage. I mean, that's just much easier to understand. And there's a much more direct line between like, oh, these companies are making record profits. They're extremely greedy. They're screwing their workers. I'm on the side of the workers. That's it. End of story. Whereas Trump and the Republicans thing is this like attempt at jujitsu to not really take a side, but then use it to bash Biden, et cetera. And I just don't think it's as clear cut of a direct message from them.
I don't disagree, and that's actually how I wonder whether he's going to change tactics, and whether he, especially a picket line appearance and all of that, if he's asked about the wages and in the speech.
I mean, if he showed up in the picket line, that would really be something
extraordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be a great thing to have two presidents, both opponents in the race endorsing like wage demands. That's bipartisanship. That's what we've always desired here.
Right.
It?
And then, but I mean, and then you see like his National Labor Relations Board and the way that he just chocked it full of, I mean, he's been a union buster his entire, even in his business career. So it's also dissonant with what his record was. But even the symbology of him and Biden, if he were to show up at the picket line, if he were to change his rhetoric, these are all big ifs at this point, that would be a lot of pressure on these auto execs.
Oh, we got to be watching. Yeah, let's watch it closely. I mean, I think it would be an extraordinary moment if something like that happened. I mean, don't forget, we've had a couple of moments like this which have showed us like how corrupt the system is. Trump and Biden have endorsed the J.D. Vance, Sherrod Brown rail safety bill. It's one of the only bills in the entire modern Congress that has ever been endorsed by the two sitting leaders of their party, and it still has been unable to pass because of railway interests on the GOP side, which I think tells you a lot about some of those senators and some of those House of Representatives people are. But the point is that's very rare for stuff like that to happen. Now, look, it hasn't passed, but it's like 1 or 2 votes, I think, away from passage. So if they were, as you said, if Trump were to join the picket line, and again, it's a big if he were to declare some sort of support, the auto workers can't be, or the bosses can't be like, man, maybe we should wait this out, because that could very much be on their minds too, about change in Washington, change in regulatory regime. So it could definitely actually put even more pressure on them if it were to happen. It would be interesting.
Yeah. The thing with Trump is he'll do all of this symbolic stuff. Especially if you go back to 2016, like the things he was saying.
Carrier.
Carrier versus how he governed. I did a thing on like what happened with Lordstown. He went there and was like, don't sell your homes, in Youngstown, like don't sell your homes. We're bringing it back. Of course, that all fell apart. So he'll do all the symbolic stuff. However, I will say in a moment like this, when you have a strike, and this is why I was heartened by Biden's rhetoric, that sort of rhetoric coming from very prominent officials or the president of the United States, you're talking about a handful of auto executives who are making these decisions about how this is going to go forward. And so in that instance, the bully pulpit actually really does matter. And the other place where it has mattered is we've never in my lifetime had higher public support for unions and striking workers. And so even though Trump was a union buster as, a business person and as a president, the fact that his rhetoric was different on unions, I think opened up a possibility for the public, including Republicans, to be at least tacitly in support of union power because, they didn't see the sleight of hand that like, oh, he's saying this, but then really what he's doing is union busting. Yeah. So, hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.